Hi, everyone. I've got Fluffy here, and he's about to go into a nap. It is warm. We had temperatures to 100 degrees Fahrenheit here yesterday in Albuquerque, and I wonder what it's going to be like in August. But Fluffy, instead of wanting to go chase the insects and jump on Chocolate, who is downstairs doing exactly that, he fell asleep in my arms, and I thought, well, this is fantastic. I'm going to open up on this July 8th of 2020, where most everybody has got warmth everywhere, with my dear Fluffy falling asleep before I go live in a broadcast to all of you, who I love very much, and I know how much you love your cats, your dogs, your families, and I'm so glad that we have that in this age of COVID. You know, 10 months ago, in August of 2019, we'll see Fluffy's tail. I was in Utah, and I was working with Prometheus Studios on the new Skinwalker Ranch series for the History Channel. And one of the many mysteries about the ranch is at least 3 centuries of Navajo and Ute Indians warning about shape-shifting skinwalkers in the Uintah Basin. For Navajos, a skinwalker is a dangerous witch who has the power to disguise themselves as an animal. The Navajo teach that there are places where both good and evil are present at the same time. And the now famous Skinwalker Ranch in the Uintah Basin near Vernal, Utah, has had a history of red glowing lights in the house, UFOs in the sky and near the ground, animal mutilations, circles imprinted in the ground, and ominous shadow presences that interfere with camera equipment and human minds on that ranch. In fact, UFO phenomena in the Uintah Basin of Utah was reported as far back as 1776 by a Franciscan missionary who described strange fireballs in the sky over the Uintah Basin area. Now, back on May 25th, 1980, that was the first broadcast of my TV documentary, A Strange Harvest. And that was a 9-month investigation that I did 18 hours a day without let up, to investigate and try to get to the bottom of the bloodless, trackless animal mutilations that were in Colorado, the surrounding states, and I came to learn was happening in both hemispheres, had been for some time, and the MO was always bloodless, same excisions, and very often no tracks, even in dust, around a 2,000-pound bull. And the sheriff and the deputy would look at each other and say, there's only one way this happened. Something from above lowered this animal here. I was director of special projects at the CBS station in Denver then, and after that broadcast about the animal mutilations, I had a lot of people contact me anonymously with more information. And one was an engineer who worked at Martin Marietta. He said that he had talked with miners at the Climax mine in Colorado's Rocky Mountains, where the valuable ore was first mined in 1915. He was told that after World War II in the late 1940s, miners had seen UFOs emit beams down into the Climax molybdenum mine. The Martin Marietta engineer's assumption was that the UFO beams were somehow extracting molybdenum from the mines. Molybdenum is a valuable metal that can take a lot of heat and is used as an alloy to strengthen steel. Now, remembering that discussion about UFO phenomena interested in molybdenum, when I was getting ready to travel to the Fort Duchesne in Vernal, Utah region last August to join the Skinwalker Ranch production, I wanted to know if there were any molybdenum mines in the Uintah Basin. And I found the answer was yes. On pages 91 to 92 in this 1961, The Mineral Resources of Uintah County. It's from the Utah Geological and Mineralogical Survey from the University of Utah in Salt Lake City, Utah, and it was done by Robert G. Pruitt, Jr., June of 1961, who worked in the Utah Geological and Mineralogical Survey. Under a section entitled Molybdenum, the University of Utah report states, quote, "An unusual and interesting occurrence of molybdenum is reported by Hess in 1923 near Ouray, Utah, which is about 20 miles south of Vernal. There, ilsamanite, an amorphous water-soluble molybdenum salt, is found in sandstone lenses of the Bridger Formation, which is tertiary in age, on the south side of the Duchesne River Valley," close quote. Now, Vernal is the county seat for the Uintah Basin in Utah, near where that H is in Uintah on that map. If you're up where a crow is flying high, or maybe even from a UFO, it is only 236 miles west, a little northwest, from the Climax Molybdenum, Colorado mine in the Rockies there to Vernal in the Uintah Basin. Look at that. So that research left me wondering if a key to the eerie phenomena in the Uintah Basin, and specifically the Skinwalker Ranch, could be because another intelligence, not human, has based itself for a long time deep underground below the Uintah Basin. Would remote viewers be able to find that out? 1 year ago, on June 11, 2019, New York City writer Maureen Seberg reported for Medium.com in an article entitled "Street Magic in the Bronx, Savant Psychic X Displays Inexplicable Abilities." Maureen watched Psychic X bend the metal shaft of a screwdriver using only his mind. A local minister encouraged Psychic X to use his abilities to help heal people and told Maureen, quote, "He is gifted, intense, intuitive, tenacious, curious, and we have healed 5 people now, and a dog," close quote. And Psychic X told Maureen, quote, "We all have these abilities to some degree, but if we taught children they were limitless from the start, what kind of world would this be?" Close quote. Part of Psychic X's great talent is remote viewing and astral projection. He has used those abilities behind the scenes to help research at the Skinwalker Ranch. And when I ask him, could the reason the Uintah Basin and the Skinwalker Ranch have had long histories of high strangeness, could it be because there is an alien, non-human base deep underground where the molybdenum might be? Here now is Psychic X with his remote view perspective from deep underneath the Skinwalker Ranch region.
I've done viewing underneath Skinwalker, and it's my belief that there is a factory, a location where they build craft and build other things deep underground there. And that's one of the results that I had gotten from my reading. And the fact that they're picking up metals and materials to make craft is logical.
Molybdenum?
I don't know specifically all the metals that are used for it. I've examined the location, and this factory that seems to not have a traditional entrance. There's not like a tunnel or a door or a flap or anything. It is just this space, very deep, over a mile straight down, behind the oldest cabin that is there on the ranch. Straight down from there is where you would find it. And there's been a lot of electrical phenomena of not only the UFOs that have appeared there, several different types of UFOs, but also strange energy occurrences, light displays, and a variety of other things. And so I believe that a large amount of these phenomena are direct cause of that factory down there and the advanced intelligences going back and forth.
When you remote view down that mile, what do you see or sense or sketch are the specific types of non-humans?
Well, it's kind of complicated, but the location that I drew, if you take a sphere and you cut it in half, so it's a domed, flat-bottomed factory in there, and against one of the walls is kind of a glass Pyrex kind of enclosure. And inside that enclosure are little spaces that have different types of raw materials and engineered and refined materials, and different parts of craft at different stages of development. So somehow they get into that location, into that giant half sphere, and then they somehow pass it through that Pyrex glass, whatever enclosure, into these containers. And they can go in and out of those containers and take what's needed to build the next level of something. I believe that all the beings there are some sort of second-generation life form, meaning that they are sent here by another life form of some kind that created them for this purpose.
You mean AI, artificial intelligence, specifically designed to mine deep a mile down under the Skinwalker Ranch?
Correct. And that they look like biological entities, but they're just a super advanced biological robot. I wanted to know what the primary civilization was, who built them, and I found a post-biological kind of artificial intelligence at the base foundation of all of this stuff that is not here in this solar system. It had sent a probe initially to our solar system and had monitored Venus, Mars, and Earth through its different life cycles. And so they've been here for a long, long, long time. They're all second-generation life forms. They weren't born on another planet and then flew here. They were created here.
All underground.
All underground, correct. And at different places in our solar system, there are numerous different bases of different kinds for different purposes.
Like where?
There was one on the surface of the moon that is under the surface of the moon. Jupiter has some interesting moons as well, from Ganymede to Europa. Ganymede is of particular interest currently.
What is the recent interest in Ganymede?
Ganymede is a way station where many of these second-generation beings stay, but they're of a variety of appearances.
Can you go back to the progenitor race? What are they like?
The progenitor race, the original race, which is a post-biological race. I believe that once a biological race like ours reaches a certain level, they have no choice almost but to go post-biological.
And you mean like going to cyborg and AI. And it reminds me that just in the past year, Elon Musk said, for humans, Homo sapien, to remain relevant, we were going to have to evolve ourselves to cyborgs.
Human beings are made for this planet. And in order to evolve and to continue beyond this planet and beyond this technological era, we will absorb technology more and more. And there's an obvious, tremendous advantage in going post-biological.
I had the good fortune last December to have Christmas with my family in Philadelphia, and I was able to meet Psychic X, and he doesn't remain a silhouette anymore. I am happy to introduce you to the kind, compassionate, brilliant D. Baron Bolton from the Bronx, hugging his furry soul, and known to all of his friends as Buddy, the producer of AlienProtocols.com. He will turn 52 in August this year as he continues to help scientists on the Skinwalker Ranch investigations and is always helping others with his healing powers. Recently, I called Buddy to ask if he could remote view the May 12, 2020 Magé Brazil UFO crash retrieval case that I was reporting about in May and June. There has been so much cover-up and blocking of information by military and intelligence forces. Only a couple of weeks ago, one Brazil military source was going to talk with me, backlighted and voice-altered, about his own eyewitness observations of the red glowing UFO being chased by helicopters near the Imbel ammunitions factory in Magé Brazil. The UFO and its at least 4 helicopters in pursuit headed east, and the red glowing UFO was shot down by American military forces on the Soberbo River near the Fingers of God Mountains in the Organ Range, about 20 miles east of Magé. But then the Brazilian military source had his life threatened, the source that was communicating with me, and he backed away. That means there is something very serious in the Magé incident. Why would anyone in the United States and or Brazil, military or government, threaten a soldier's life? The implication is that Magé Brazil and beyond is very important evidence that alien intelligence in advanced aerial craft are even now interacting with our planet in spite of human power broker efforts to keep the human population from the big truth that we are not alone in this universe and other intelligences have been here on this planet and throughout our solar system for millions of years. So after the intimidation worked on the military source in Brazil, I reached out to Buddy in the Bronx of New York. I sent him the latitudes and longitudes that I had received in the anonymous EB letter for the what we call the alien kill site and a second capture and retrieval site of what are described as 6.6, assuming that's feet, tall white beings. Here is what Buddy Bolton learned when he did astral projection into the Magé Brazil incident of May 12th, 2020.
So once I got the latitude and longitude, I did an astral projection. And once I got the information, I started getting a flood of images and sounds and smells and sights. And so I just kind of closed my eyes and let the information come in, and I started writing it down. And the first thing I saw was a craft that was hit in the front underside. If you put 2 plates on top of each other, it would be on the bottom plate in the side facing you. It was hit with a really strong energy source from the ground, concentrated plasma, laser, something really, really powerful like that. And it wobbled, and it kind of took a left bank and crashed into a mountain there. The craft was really interesting. It was super intelligent to the point where it would be considered by us alive. The craft, the entire surface of it, had a black, glassy, iridescent, it was kind of like oil on water where the iridescence would move inside the blackness. But as the craft was there over time, the iridescence stopped moving, slows down, and comes to a stillness. And it also had at least 3 of these arched red vents, almost like gills in a row on 2 sides of the craft. I drew a drawing for you. They were red when flying, but the same thing like with the black iridescence and the color fading away, the same thing happened with the red vents. The color transitioned darker, darker, darker to black.
Like it died.
Correct, or ran out of power or whatever. And so I tried to get a sense of the craft first, and the craft shut itself off, I think. It knew it was damaged, and it has these protocols it goes through if this kind of thing happens, and so that's what it did. Inside there were 3 tall whites, which were a long-haired male, a long-haired female, and then another one that I believe is a male.
Did you get any intuitive impression about why these 3 tall whites were there in the Magé Brazil area? And do they have white hair, blonde hair, or what?
I had a brownish, dirty blonde hair for the male leader. For the other, I just had them as long-haired. They weren't black hair, I remember that. It was either blonde or like a dirty blonde or light brown.
All right.
And I got the sense of a leader from one, and so I drew. I'm not a great artist, but I drew as best I could. And he had a skin-tight blue fabric that was almost like a unitard. And around his neck, there was a necklace that had some energy source in it. It was mildly radioactive. And I kept getting the sense of perfection. These were perfect. They were genetically perfect. The leader had a broken arm, and the three tall whites escaped the craft, got out of the craft through the top. There's a hatch on the top, and there's a hatch on the side. They escaped from the top. The craft also has 3 floors, technically. A really tiny top floor, which is really just a little space you can crawl through to go to the hatch. And then there's 3 kind of contoured seats are back-to-back, and they're kind of custom formed for the bodies. And underneath that layer is the other layer where there's 2 little grays. But they didn't seem like the typical grays with the big eyes. They seemed more like a combination of human and gray. And so they were alive, and they escaped out through the top. The 3 tall whites sensed that they were being attacked and they were being approached by helicopters. So they escaped. And 1 got shot right there, and then 2 were shot later. And 1 lived for a while after being shot and was speaking in Portuguese and said to someone leaning over him, why, in Portuguese.
Any reply from the American or the Brazilian or whoever was there?
It was a U.S. force, and it's a special unit. And I got some initials. I don't know if this is exactly the initials of the program or close, but I got JOSAP. Either it or close to that is the name of the program that operates this UFO shoot-down program. And it's not only in Brazil and Peru, it's all over South America and in Europe and different places in Africa.
It is a force designed just to shoot down UFOs.
And retrieve ones that have already crashed, or even to go to the locations of beings.
Do you have any sense of what JOSAP might stand for?
I don't.
In your remote viewing, astral projection, do you get any impression about why humans on this planet have some sort of an operation to shoot down UFOs?
It's for the technology. The U.S. has a long history, and other countries have a long history of retrieving advanced technologies and trying to reverse engineer them. And, of course, it's to weaponize these things. That's why they would keep it a secret. No other reason to keep it a secret other than to weaponize. The program used to have other countries involved, but over time, now just been limited to the U.S. is the main force down there. And I even remember Luis Elizondo saying recently in a speech how the biggest stuff is happening in South America right now. He couldn't say any more.
Did you get any intuitive impression about why these 3 tall whites were there in the Magé Brazil area?
They have a long history of crossing over Peru into the rainforest of Brazil, which is the densest life form area on Earth with the largest variety of creatures. So they have been going there, getting the data, the information, and the biology, and taking samples, and there's a list of things that they're retrieving each mission, and then they take it back to an underwater base. They store up enough of it at the underwater base, and then from there, it goes off-planet.
Buddy, when they take it off-planet, whatever it is that they're gathering from South America or the Earth, where are they going? What is their home world?
Well, with this group, I'm not certain what the home world is, but there's a long history of tall whites associated with Ganymede, and I got Ganymede again on this. So I don't know if that was a way station.
How could there be advanced beings, tall blondes or tall whites, and have these kinds of advanced craft that they can move through the solar system? How would they ever be taken down by any human force on Earth?
You know, you would think it would be impossible as an advanced technology. I'm sure the craft are designed to take all the different forms of energy and solar flares and cosmic rays and all the different conditions of space, but not the level of concentrated energy that this plasma weapon has. I feel like its navigation was thrown off more than it was like, the hole wasn't blasted in it,
Mm-hmm.
So that's the take I get from it, that the surge of energy was too much.
Buddy, where do you think that the craft is now, and where each of those three tall, perhaps 6 foot 6 inch high blondes are?
Well, the bodies were taken to a small city in Peru, Cajamarca, where it's an exclusive U.S. base. It's a secret base for this force. And from there, it was flown straight to Wright-Patterson, and it had refueling in the air over Central America somewhere. The craft was put in a hangar at Wright-Pat, and it was heavily guarded for a short period of time. And then I believe the craft was flown to Tonopah. The biologicals were taken underground to the space lab that's underground at Wright-Pat. There's been some information that has come out previously about a space base being underneath the surface of Wright-Pat, and that's come out in budgetary stuff. So the three beings were brought there, and my belief is that they are still there.
Alive or all three dead?
All three were dead. The one that was shot and speaking lived a few more hours and then passed. There were the two little guys underneath who escaped, and I don't want to say anything more about that.
They escaped into the Brazil environment.
Correct, with some technology.
Why do you think that the United States and Brazil would choose violence? Why wouldn't we have some sort of a treaty association if we have a space force that has a technology that can shoot down an advanced craft? Why are we shooting down? Why are we not in peaceful communication with them, in which we might learn how to do a lot of technology?
You could learn a little bit from a broken watch. You can learn a little bit more from a whole watch. But you could learn a lot more by talking to the watchmakers. They're on a mission. They're here to do stuff under a time crunch.
How would what you have drawn and seen in your mind's eye now of the three tall, blondish beings inside of that advanced craft, how do they compare to what you have seen in remote viewing or astral projection of the 1 mile underground factory at Skinwalker Ranch?
I think it's similar, and I think it's associated, but with different objectives. Skinwalker seems more like it's a factory to get the basic minerals and the basic elements, and then to refine them to different levels, and then store them. But these guys were already in a pre-built craft, already doing the mission, which is this preservation of data. Data is the most valuable thing in the universe. Information is power. And life forms are one of the densest forms of data in the universe. So it speaks to how wonderful universal biology is and how exquisitely unique Earth is, that an advanced civilization cares so much about our biosphere and us.
The United States and Brazil, why would we be shooting down and killing the intelligence in the craft?
They want the technology, period. Imagine having a nuclear missile that is made of nanomaterial, metamaterial, that can be completely invisible to all radar, that can fly hypersonic, the ultimate in weapons, plus the power source. This is the most valuable technology on the planet.
And they would be artificial intelligence from our point of view.
Essentially, they're created.
And we are created.
True, true.
These extraterrestrial biological entities manipulated DNA in already evolving primates on this planet in order to create Homo sapien. That is that direct quote from that government document I saw in 1983.
And we're at a very dangerous stage in our evolution and our technology, because our technology is more powerful than we are spiritually. And there's a very good chance we could destroy ourselves. Many biologists are certain we're in the middle of a mass extinction now.
I was going to ask to the general audience around the world if you had any idea about an acronym that would start capital J, capital O, capital S, and perhaps A as in apple, P as in Paul, and that it might be something like joint operations for space and aerial phenomena. Let's just throw that out. We did get a chat note that there is an acronym in the military, as I understand it, as J, Jump, S, Sam, O, Orange, T, Tom, F, Frank, and that might be an acronym that is always used if there is a necessity for a temporary joint and national security agency and some other military operation, perhaps. So I'm now going to throw it back to you all. If there is anybody who knows, because I did a lot of search on the JOSAP and I couldn't find anything myself. It could be that there are classifications that never ever make into any acronyms on the web. But I would sure love all of your help on looking at these acronyms, and if there's somebody out there who has information firsthand from being inside, whether it's National Security Agency or Geospatial or the Defense Intelligence Agency or any of the 17 agencies that might be involved now on the going after to capture, retrieve entities alive or dead and extraterrestrial technology, as we had Operations Pounce, Operations Moondust back at the early 50s. I would love to know that. And maybe there was a concerted effort tonight to interfere on purpose. And I hope not. I hope it was natural, because I would say myself that I feel that what I'm reporting tonight is responsible, is much closer to a truth of what our planet really is like in the solar system, and that we have deserved to hear the truth for so long, that this is a good way to get truth out. So please, don't digitally attack. Now, Peggy, dear Peggy, we are now at 20 minutes after, and I know we're going to edit out those double things where it was the audio and the video weren't working right. So what I'd like to do is to go to questions and comments and go perhaps an extra 5 or 10 minutes after the bottom of the hour. Does that work with you?
I think that works.
All right.
All right. We have a couple of people who think that they might know what that acronym was.
Yeah.
One was Joint Operations Special Activity Program. However, we've had other people in the chat also think it might be Joint Operation Space Asset Program or Special Aliens Program, but I think in all seriousness, the perhaps Joint Operations Special Activity Program might be that acronym stands for.
Great, and if you can grab those chats and forward to me, I would appreciate that if it's possible.
Yeah, will do.
Okay.
I have some questions here.
Yeah.
We have first, I think it goes a little bit more into what you were talking about the last couple of weeks. However, somebody would like to know, do you think that the pyramids and obelisks are the machinery for the soul recycling in the world?
That is a good question. When you think of that limestone, beautiful frieze that has been in various museum books, and it shows scales, and there's 2 pans, and there's a feather in one. This is Egyptian, and Thoth is there, and they've got the soul on one side of the scale, and they've got the feather on this side of the scale, and you can see it, and Thoth is waiting there in judgment. And the way it is stated, that the hieroglyphs mean, if the soul is found to be lighter than the feather of truth, it will go on to heaven. if it is found to be heavier than the feather of truth. It goes straight forward into what? The open jaws of an alligator waiting. So that is a kind of, it always has seemed to me that that one particular hieroglyph certainly falls into the category of hieroglyphs, monuments, maybe trying to show us that this is machinery and that the recycling of the soul might be something that is a machinery and a process. The question is, why does it depict a crocodile, a large one with its mouth open, waiting for the soul that is heavier than the feather of truth? I've always thought of that as one of the more mysterious ancient mystery art and what the implications are. Now, in terms of pyramids, I've talked quite a bit about that, and I personally am convinced that people in the abduction syndrome from Australia and New Zealand and every part of the world have been exposed in either little pieces or big pieces, that the pyramid shape and what it is made out of and where it is put on any spherical geometry can automatically generate energy and the ability to communicate, perhaps through entanglement in frequencies. So the pyramids, I think, are definitely machines, but they're not isolated. I think they were and are produced, not just on this planet, but other planets where people in the abduction syndrome have said they've been in a craft, they've been taken to another planet, they know it's not the Earth, and they're looking at a whole complex of pyramids. And there are other people who, throughout the ages, have talked about the pyramid builders, both here on the Earth and throughout the galaxy. And then if you have the pyramids and you have something about a process related to soul reincarnation, then there are all of the other aspects of building with lots of spaces and hallways, as if the stone, the limestone, which is like a crystal, is put together in a sense to vibrate air in tunnels and spaces. And even though we aren't demonstrating that for ourselves today, it seems to me that if you put everything that's been written and said in the abduction syndrome having to do with advanced intelligences communicating with humans, even if they are in some kind of an abduction experience, that there has been a lot of communication, that the ancient limestone structures of the pyramids and the obelisks and all of the stuff in stone, that it was designed to be a machinery. And part of the excitement, I think, is as we're getting into Göbekli Tepe and other areas, if we start applying some of these hypotheses to trying to understand what is really there and how did it really function, gosh, to apply it then to the current world and be able to have free energy and free communication, even though power brokers wouldn't like that, it's probably a potential that we could have and maybe will have someday. So thank you for that question. What about another, Peggy?
We have a viewer. I'm sorry I didn't catch the name of the viewer, and they said, how do you feel about aliens in disguise living among us? I've been a nurse for 33 years. 10 years ago, I had a patient I feel was an alien.
I would like her to answer through the chat to you, why did she think it was an alien? Can we do that? And you
hopefully she or he is still in the chat.
Yeah.
And perhaps we will see a response here.
Yeah, somebody who is a nurse, who would have some sort of an intuitive or experiential reaction to what looked like a human in front of them, but had this distinct sense that it wasn't. That would be very interesting to talk. And just in the last 6 months, I've had, I would think, probably a dozen or more letters from people who have described, whether it was in England or New Zealand or the United States, a lot of different countries, the same kind of thing. The letter might start off, I got on a bus, and when I sat down, I knew instantly that the person sitting next to me was not human. That is one of the strengths I think that we have as a species. There is something about the human soul, the human psyche, that we just seem to instantly know and pick up when we are in the presence of danger, if we can't see it. How many times in the pre-COVID age, when you would shake hands with people, how many of you have had that instant experience? This is an enemy, or this is danger, or, oh, this is a cool energy. There's a gamut that has come through handshakes. That's probably how handshakes started. And so the human has the ability to detect so much in the unseen. And that one phrase that Buddy used when he said, if only we taught children that there were no limits, what would this world be like? Meaning no limits to what they could try to do. That's part of what I think is the best part of humans. We have great spirit and great energy, and we don't give up easily. And that's part of, I think, why we're here. So has anybody had the ability to answer on the nurse? I would love to know if she's not available now and she's listening and she can let me know what it was that she picked up on as a nurse. I would love to know. And then I'd be happy to share that next week.
Absolutely. And I did ask that he email you directly regarding the experiences that he has as a nurse.
How about another?
Okay. So have you heard about all of these people channeling Pleiadians? Do you believe that this kind of communication is possible?
The name, the Pleiadians, as star people, goes all the way back to the Incas in Peru and to Mesopotamia and to lots of parts of Europe. The Pleiadian or Pleiades, it's such a tiny little kind of dipper, little teeny dipper. Sometimes it's called the little teeny dipper as compared to the huge big dipper. But there really is a tiny little thing of stars. And when I encountered for the very first time in my investigations of animal mutilations, a rancher that Dr. Leo Sprinkle at the University of Wyoming was working with as a counselor. He ended up, in many ways, Leo Sprinkle was the first to get down in the trenches to try to understand what was happening with missing time and people in the human abduction syndrome. And one of them was this rancher. And the rancher had contacted Leo because he had mutilations. He and his family had seen football field-sized, orange fluorescent glowing UFOs over a ridge that was about a mile from their ranch house. I was there with my film crew when I did A Strange Harvest. And that night, that same rancher, that same ridge where they had found half a dozen mutilated animals, we saw something extraordinary. We still don't know what it was, but it was extraordinary that over this same ridge, where there have been so much anomalous activity and animal mutilations, the crew is getting the equipment out, and I wanted to do some trucking shots as the twilight was coming on the ranch and interview the rancher out in the darker sky. So they were getting out the tripods and the camera and the rancher came up to me and he said, "Take a look." And he pointed off toward this ridge, and it just stood out like a tomato red, larger than a star. And I'm staring at that from my 4-year-old up to now love of astronomy and working with telescopes when I could in my life, and loving the night sky and knowing at least enough to separate out our planets and recognizing certain stars and constellations. I'm now looking at something that is a color that it would be like, I'll show, this is Peggy's speaker. Imagine, in my mind's eye, remembering it would be this color. It would be that rich red, only coming up glowing about, like Venus, the way Venus is pretty bright, but now turn it that color red. So the crew hurried up, and we have all this bustling trying to see if we're going to be able to get this in the camera as the first thing that showed up on location at this Wyoming ranch. And I remember Rich Lerner was running camera and Mark O'Kane was on audio. And they came over to me and said, "Should we set up right here?" And I'm saying yes. And the rancher is standing there. And the four of us who are getting ready, we're going to film this thing that's coming up. It stops and it immediately starts down like this. As slow as it came up, it now goes down. And I turned to them and said, "That's not astronomical. There's nothing I know that comes up about 4 or 5 degrees and stops and then goes back down." And the rancher said, "Well, I told you. That's what we've been dealing with here for quite a while. And when we see those red ones, we're probably going to have a mutilation." And what all does that mean? Peggy, have we heard anything now from the nurse?
So the nurse's name is William, and he said he's going to email you directly with the details of his experiences.
All right. I very much look forward to that, and then I will try to share that with you guys next week. But let's go on to another question.
A viewer would like to know, they think it's strange that we haven't seen any events that depict or show the competition between competing ET races. Are things happening that we are unaware of?
Oh, I think I understand. Somebody tell Peggy if I'm interpreting this correctly. I think what you mean is if we have 3 advanced extraterrestrial civilizations from different solar systems, or maybe 2 from the same and they fight each other there, but at least 3 different ones. Standing up reptiles, standing up blondes or whites, and the menagerie of grays that most everybody agrees now is largely artificial intelligence. Buddy calls it 2nd generation, can be 3rd generation. The progenitors may have started out as biological, and then they moved to AI and to cyborg. If we had 3 major competing extraterrestrial civilizations for 270 million years, which is what the DIA guy told me, wouldn't we see all kinds of conflict around us? I think that's what people are asking. Wouldn't it be more obvious? And I think that the answer, after the 41 years that I have been trying to understand this complex chess game, the answer is no. That in fact, the lack of interaction, the lack of specificity about who is friendly, who is neutral, and who is unfriendly, is in keeping with this being a planet that has been identified, just as the DIA guy told me in 1999, as a laboratory that is looked at by all three competing civilizations as a laboratory with these deep oceans. And a laboratory is to experiment in. So the last thing that the three competitors would want would be whatever they are mixing and matching in genes on the Earth to find out what it was they were doing. And since Homo sapiens sapien, this model is in a string of models that I think that document that I was shown in 1983 is correct, extraterrestrial biological entities, manipulated DNA in already evolving primates to create Homo sapien. Homo erectus was the first, and there have been many, and we are now the current one. And as Buddy also said, there's a lot of biologists who are seriously wondering, are we going to be in a mass extinction? And then would this experiment of Homo sapiens sapien be gone from the universe forever? I don't think so. I think that we're being given a huge challenge in many ways, but we are reaching out. We're going to have 4 or 5 missions to Mars, if all goes well, in this month of July. We are definitely trying to get humans out into the solar system. And that I think we do have allies, and I have no question that there is a divine field, and that the divine field has a lot to do with the strong souls that are in Homo sapien, our greatest gift. And that even now in this age of COVID, where some days it just feels unbearable, that if we can get through this period with each other as humans who can fight each other over anything, we also can love each other in a way that I'm not sure that any of those other species know. And so I don't think that whole scale, in your face, spaceships fighting is what anybody wants. Certainly not the Pentagon at this point. So that means that the conflict has always been sort of through manipulation of genes, through manipulation through holograms, that there are various experiments, don't know what the holograms are, and that in the laboratory situation, we are always being tested. And that puts us in a strange category as we become more and more conscious. And that's why I just deeply, to me, it's a soul pressure, why I do the work I do. I truly feel that humans deserve the entire truth, and that if we were given the entire truth about everything, the sources, the beginnings, the conflicts, the genetic manipulations, the experiments, what we are and why we are, there might then finally be a new sort of foundation for humans to start over with each other and embrace us, embrace the humanness as perhaps something that really, truly is special in this whole universe, where artificial intelligence, in all of its digital zeros and ones perfection, operates so much, having to do with space travel and exploration of planets. And it's hard on an organic body like a human. But in the end, exactly as Buddy said, if information is what drives real intelligence, if gathering information about our past and our present and our future were given to the entire earth, and children were not denied knowledge, and they were encouraged that you can be anything you want to be. That's what my father always said to me. You can be anything you want to be. If we lived on a planet like that, then maybe it would even seem antiquated that there were all those centuries where humans were kept in the dark by advanced intelligences experimenting and misusing and abusing, until finally humans grew up enough that they could look at each other and say, I recognize your soul, and I love your soul, and I want us all to survive. I just feel there is something like right here, a direction that something is trying to get humans to go in what would be a choice that we would have survival and not extinction. And I felt exactly that in that crop formation that I talked to some of you about a couple of years ago when I started this Earthfiles YouTube. It was my very first crop formation. I'm in England. I'm at Milk Hill. There are half a dozen other people. I had just gotten there. Airplane, getting into a cottage, and all I wanted to do was to get in one of these crop formations that everybody said, you've got to go over to Milk Hill. And this group of us who ended up on the top, we're looking down. There's that big white horse that's carved, one of the chalk horses, and then it swoops down into this enormous, beautiful, beautiful field. And it was not a recognizable pattern. It was circles with paths making kind of undulating for 400 and I believe it was 430 feet, bigger than a football field. And there was kind of this joint agreement. Okay, we're going to go down through the tram line so we don't break any of the wheat. And nobody said anything else. You've just got 6 or 7 people that are full of energy and want to get in and see this. So we start down the hill, and I don't know why. That's the part of life. I'm just sort of drawn by energy to keep going down this tram line. I want to get further in, and everybody else stopped at one end. So where I stopped, I'm by myself because it's so huge. I'd gone down a lot further. And I approached, and I had been used to take my Nikon camera and look through the zoom to look at the floor, what they call the floor. I knew about doing that and not to walk on the crop formation, even though it was my first one. Well, as I approached the edge of where the wheat was around one of these enormous circles, my idea was that I was going to step into it to see what it felt like underneath my feet. And I hit a literal wall of warm jello. That's what it felt like. I was so startled. The other people were further away, and I didn't want to yell if something that felt almost spiritual about everything in every direction. And so I just waited, and I kept doing this, and this warm jello that seemed to be around the edge of this big circle, it didn't give in. So I just started taking photographs sort of through whatever this was, feeling I'm being kept out. And then suddenly there was this sense that something changed. It was gone. I stepped in gingerly into this big circle, and it went around to a path that went on to another circle about another 100 feet. And that's the direction. I wanted to go as far as I could to the end of this enormous place. And I'm thinking about what could that have been, that warm jello blocking. Some people say it's some sort of an electrostatic effect. Well, when I got to the end, the very end, as far as you could go, I'm standing, I'm taking photos with my lens. And all of a sudden, it was just this feeling we were talking about. You get it with people, you get it with animals, you get it with plants. This was my first crop formation, and what suddenly was coming from the wheat around the circle end was like a thought voice. And the thought voice said, as clear as can be inside of my mind, life on this planet is not guaranteed. And with that word, thought word, came an image of a tiger that I had seen from like a jeep when I was down in Africa, and I was working on child survival, and I had seen a tiger close from a jeep with a hunter. And I still remembered those eyes and the penetration of absolutely intense intelligence. And that's exactly what I felt as those words came in my mind. The intelligence of a Bengal tiger. And yet, I felt absolutely no threat. It was like a communication of a paradigm, something I had not ever experienced before. And that was one of the gifts of being in crop formations. Many things like that happen. But that may be where we all are. We may be right there at the end of the last circle of a 430-foot pattern. And there's something out there saying, life is not guaranteed, but at the same time, provokes you to want to live, to want to learn, to want to explore, to want someday to know that we had bases, cities on Mars. I love you guys. Thank you for your patience tonight. I'll see you back here next week.